Um,
Yes.
you seem to have a strong opinion on this. Do you want to start up then?
Well, I wouldn't say I have a strong opinion, but I would like to say that obviously I'm not a virology expert. I never have, don't claim to be. I don't really study the coronavirus. I've mostly studied China, the way that the current leadership operates, the Remo, their way of thinking. Obviously, I don't live inside their head, but read extensively, and I've prepared, I'll say, enough for this debate. I think that the coronavirus was not manufactured. It was created naturally, and this was all just a bad scribble.
So, you're saying it was natural. What sort of data points do you have pointing to that?
Well, there isn't anything unnatural. So.
What about the PRRA insertion?
The who?
PRRA insertion. There's an insertion right in the receptor binding domain in between the S1 and S2 subunits of PRRA. Do you know anything about that?
You just talk gibberish.
Well, basically, there is an insertion in this. You know what an insertion is?
You're saying insertion, not assertion, right?
Insertion.
Yeah, I know what insertion is.
Yeah, so right in between the S1 and S2 subunits of the spike protein in the receptor binding domain, which is what allows it to bind to ACE2, which is what allows it to infect human cells. There's an insertion right on that junction of PRRA. There is not an insertion on any other coronavirus in the same family as SARS. There are no other sarbecoviruses, they're called, or SARS-like coronaviruses. None of them have this insertion. None of them have any insertions, in fact, right there. And this PRRA, it's like the perfect insertion they could have ever had, because the P, what that does is allows for O-linked glycans to form, which kind of shields it from the immune system, so it has a lessened immune response. And the RRA combines up with an RRAR, which is already there. And then the RRAR essentially is a polybasic furin cleavage site. And what this allows is basically there are two ways. There's a two-step process to get into a cell. First, it has to bind to ACE2 or some other, receptor or whatever. Then it has to cleave its protein so that it can actually go in. And then this is the cleavage site that allows it to do that. And the RRAR is one of the most efficient ways to do that, which we know now, of course.
Well, that would explain, first of all, this is China we're talking about. We have no idea how many diseases there are that are unaccounted for, diseases that the CCP may be hiding, diseases that the CCP hasn't found yet. Furthermore, there's no telling if this was the reason why it was able to survive. Coronaviruses, when transferred from animal to human, tend to die very quickly. So this could be the reason it evolved this way, so it didn't die.
Well, no, but you have to explain where that insertion came from, though. There are a couple of different ways you can get an insertion through nature. You can have it either through recombination, in which case you need some sort of parent virus for this recombinant virus. In fact, you need multiple parents, of course. And there is no explained parent, which also has this site. Like in all the other beta coronavirus families, other than sarbecovirus, the ones which do have insertions there, you can actually trace it back because we can see all the parents and stuff. And saying it might just be a natural virus, but the Chinese government are hiding it. That's not particularly convincing to me.
Why?
No, I mean, why would they be hiding it like that? They want to be publishing papers and getting famous.
For the same why they were hiding this coronavirus.
It would take away all the suspicion if they had previous viruses. That's exactly what they did with rat EG13, which is a fake virus. If they had a real one and didn't have all these signals being fake in it, which I can go over those if you want, then they would perfectly exonerate them. They would say, hey, look, this is the natural where it came from, if they had all these viruses that they just weren't releasing to the world. And like, it's not just in China. You'd see these viruses elsewhere, like in Malaysia and whatnot, because they believe it came from in between, went from a bat, Raphinus adolphus or whatever, went from that into a Malayan pangolin. So it's a Malayan pangolin. They're mostly in the Malayan Peninsula, as the name would suggest.
Well, yes, it would suit them if they were to say it, but the CCP probably has its own reasons. Amongst that, they probably think that announcing where it came from will scare off investors, which is the reason that they were already.
Why would it scare off investors to say, hey, we have the natural path that this came from? Why would that scare off investors?
Well, because this natural path, it is what stops it from doing it again.
You can have if you know where it came from, then you can put in implementate. You can stop that. What they'd really be wanting to cover up is if it was made through gain of function research, and then the only way to stop that would be to stop gain of function research. I can see exactly why they'd want to sweep that under the rug.
I need to know: do you think that it was done maliciously, or if it was a lab leak?
I think it was a lab leak, and then after the fact, they covered it up.
Okay. So, what exactly do you think happened with the lab leak? I mean, it's not really an insecure facility. It's a whole.
Sure. Well, I mean, Shi Zheng-li herself, she's the head of coronavirus research there. She says they conduct their coronavirus research at BSL-2 or BSL-3, not BSL-4. And there was a shutdown of the Wuhan lab, which we can tell from cell phone geolocation data, which was acquired by NBC. And basically, a section of the lab and all the surrounding roads, just zero data, just zero cell phones in that area between from the 7th through to the 24th of October 2019, and shortly after the virus comes out. So there's a shutdown at this lab, some sort of biohazardous event apparently, and then suddenly, and there's also reports from the US State Department of at least three people, of course, who are sick with flu-like symptoms around this time.
I'm sorry, did you say BSL-2?
Yeah.
I'd like to see a source for that, because Wikipedia says it's BSL-4.
No, they have a BSL-4 lab, but they conduct a lot of their research. Shi Zheng-li herself said they conduct their coronavirus research at BSL-2 or BSL-3. I can get that up. Insufficient BSL here is. Yes.
But wait, they conduct their research in another Institute of Virology, in a place in the institute that doesn't have BSL-4? How does this work? How does the institute...
the Wuhan Institute of Virology has a number of labs. They do have a BSL-4 lab, which that's one of their labs, but it's like it was in fact down at the time this all went out. So basically, Shi Zheng-li, in that interview I sent into General, I can get you the exact quote. She says, "The coronavirus research in our laboratory is conducted in BSL-2 or BSL-3 laboratories." So like, it's not just like the one laboratory, and this is a BSL-4 lab. Like, researchers really don't like working in BSL-4 because it's a big pain. You basically have to get a spacesuit on in order to do all your work. It's very stuffy and everything. You can't work for that long, you know. So they prefer to work in BSL-2 or BSL-3. And BSL-2, I have to note here, is the same biosafety level of a US dentist's office.
Yes.
So completely insufficient.
Wuhan Institute of Virology. Oh damn, it's still showing it to me. So I'm gonna share my screen for me, so you the same from screen. You can't. I can't stream.
I want to share your screen.
So we can look at it together. The Wikipedia page.
I don't care about the Wikipedia page. I know they have a BSL-4 lab. That's not all I'm disputing. I'm saying Shi Zheng-li herself says the coronavirus research in our laboratory is conducted in BSL-2 or BSL-3. That's a direct quote from her.
Okay.
So that is insufficient. for conducting this
I
dangerous
agree.
research.
Oh shit. I'm just trying to find where they do the coronavirus testing, so we can see, from their site or Wikipedia or some other site. When is this quote from?
I assume it will say in the Science Mag article. Let's see. That doesn't have a date on it. I mean,
when was the article published?
No clue. It's just a PDF. Doesn't say. It doesn't have a date on it.
Things do change. It is possible that this quote was from 2015.
I mean, even if they were doing this in 2015, it just shows that they have insufficient safety standards, which is what I'm trying to show. They don't conduct their coronavirus research in very high safety labs, which is what you were saying.
But had this leaked and had China knew it was leaked, China would have locked down that area.
And they did lock down Wuhan.
Yeah, but they would have made sure China did everything it could to, almost.
I mean, like SARS has escaped from labs. SARS 1, that's escaped from labs a number of times. I can bring that up.
But I think the reason why it's hard to contain it is because there's no vaccine for it. Eh?
Yep, that's correct.
Yeah, and if China knew it came out, they wouldn't just lock down the area. They would do everything they could for it to not get out because they made it. They know what it's capable of.
Yeah, so they want to infect other countries, so they're not the only ones getting fucked. This is why I call this the Chernobyl of virology, because you have like basically Shi Zheng-li. She's like, oh fuck, one of my team members spilled a bunch of fucking super virus, and they're like, oh fuck. Well, like she'd be reluctant to tell her boss, and then once she it gets to her boss, he's like, oh shit in hell, because he's a PLA colonel, the guy who runs the Wuhan Institute of Virology. So he'd be like, Jesus Christ, the mayor's going to be really pissed off when this happens. We're having a big world record attempt soon. He's not going to like this. Let's just try and keep this within the lab. We'll shut down the lab for a bit. And then, it's clear that it's gone out of the lab. And he's like, oh, okay, mayor, buddy, there's been a virus spill. And he's like, Jesus Christ, Beijing is not going to be happy with this. So each layer, the person doesn't really want to tell their boss about it. So there's just this reluctance, and that's exactly what we saw with Chernobyl.
That's not how the CCP works. The CCP operates. I do agree with you that it can be corrupt and it can be very much what will my boss say about this. But when it comes to things like this, the CCP mostly cares about control and speed.
Yeah, sure. So they tried that, and they locked down Wuhan. And it didn't work because the lockdown isn't going to stop it. It's like, I think Chris Martenson calls it the honey badger virus. You just can't stop it.
Well, this is the CCP. They can be as authoritarian as they want.
And they were very authoritarian. They shut down Wuhan. Similarly with SARS 1. SARS 1 has escaped from labs many, many times. So it's leaked from laboratories in Singapore, Taiwan, and 4 times from the Chinese National Institute of Virology in Beijing. And that's SARS-1. That's less infectious. Do you think when it leaks, they can just shut down Wuhan and then can't get anywhere? It cannot spread from beyond that. That's just kind of ridiculous. Obviously, it's going to still spread. We have seen that lockdowns don't prevent the spread. They just slow it down.
Lockdowns do prevent the spread.
No, they don't prevent the spread. They slow it down.
Well, even if it does slow it down, that slows it down fast enough for the CCP to actually do direct action.
Well, I mean, it had already gone to France by the 12th of December. Yeah, it has a very long asymptomatic spread time. It doesn't take long for it to, get out.
Which proves my point that the CCP had no idea what they were dealing with.
Okay, well, how is this an argument for it being natural, though?
It's not an argument for it being... It's an argument for it being natural.
That is your entire thesis, though.
No, hold on. I misspoke. It's an argument for it being natural because if the CCP had created it, they know what it's capable of. The CCP...
Not necessarily. They just know that it's, a modified virus. They haven't actually tested its viral spread. Which, now they have. Now that it's been released, they know exactly how infectious it is. They can only really guess.
They know they made it.
Like, let's say they know exactly how infectious it is. Let's say it's 10 times more infectious. What exactly are they supposed to do? It's the cat's already out of the bag there. It's already in the community. It's already infected people. It's too late at that point, surely. Like, no matter, they could lock down the whole of China and it would still have gotten out.
Well, they're not going to lock down the whole of China.
Exactly. So that without, even if they went that far, it would still get out.
Had they locked, no. I'm saying that they would get measures that at least they would have talked to the international community. They would have said something.
Why?
Okay.
They want to cover it up.
Well, no, they don't.
I'm sorry, you're like fucking Xi Jinping or something. Why are you simping so hard for the CCP? You're like, no, they're good guys, really. The fucking guys who are currently covering up a genocide of the Uyghurs. Yeah, don't worry, they're real open with the international community.
I'm not saying they're open with the international community.
That is exactly what you're arguing.
I'm saying that when they recognize they can't take on a threat, they obviously get help.
Why?
And if they don't get help,
why, obviously?
Well, because they're not stupid, are they?
What? How is it stupid to cover this up? It's exactly in the MO of a Soviet government. Soviet style, I should say. It's exactly the MO of these, like, massive authoritarian governments. That's exactly their MO.
No, the MO of China is control. And that's the one thing they haven't been able to do this entire
So they tried to control it, and they failed.
Yeah.
They tried to control it, and they failed. So how is this in any way an argument for it being natural over land leak?
There's no evidence it's either. So we're going to have to go by...
There is phenomenal evidence for lab leak, in fact, and that is exactly what we're arguing.
What is the phenomenal evidence? That there's an insertion that is likely...
So I can go over one by one if you want. So there's the incompetence, there's the shutdown of the lab. It was actually built in collaboration with the French, and then the French were getting stonewalled by China, so they pulled out. And the French were going to be the only international source which was going to verify the safety of this lab. And Josh Rogan, in fact, of the Washington Post, I think, he actually wrote that it was completely insufficient. US diplomats were calling it out for being insufficient safety levels. Then there's, the intermediate host hasn't been found. The original patients had no connection to the Huanan wet market. The bats are far away, 1,500 kilometers, I believe, in Yunnan province, and they were hibernating at the time that this broke out. There was a French case on the 12th of December that I told you about. There's this... So I can go over the sequence anomalies as well. So the entire receptor binding domain, which is what allows it to bind to ACE2, identical to GD pangolin COV. Like, identical. Not identical to anything else, identical to this pangolin virus. So that looks like they've just kind of spliced that in there. Either that's a recombination with a pangolin virus, which pangolin virus?
Is there a chance that maybe that's the parent of it?
Yeah, but if it's the parent of it, where'd the insertion come from, though?
Well, the insertion came from natural selection.
Whoa. What do you mean?
Well, unless my translation from my head is wrong, the insertion is something that came through natural selection, isn't it? It attached to the
But
body.
I don't know, how did it come? To come through natural selection, it has to be some sort of recombination or out-of-frame insert, whatever. You would need that parent virus to have the RRAR, or the PRRA, rather. You would need it to have that, and GD pangolin COV doesn't have that insert. It's just everything else in the RBD is identical with that insert put in.
Well, there was probably another virus, something in the
So you've got a third virus then. Gee whiz. What you've got is you've got these bats which live in a different area than the pangolins, and then they somehow manage to interact enough with these endangered pangolins, which are very solitary animals, critically endangered, in fact. They manage to interact enough so that there is a spillover event from the bat into the pangolin. Then it needs to get acclimated to the pangolin, and this pangolin already has to be infected with there's this it has to be infected with GD pangolin COV and whatever has the insert. You know, nobody's ever found this thing in anywhere. And then all these three viruses managed to mix together. And then this pangolin decides to take a road trip all the way up to Wuhan. And then infect somebody in a market where pangolin wasn't sold. So what I would have to do, and the naturalists even admit this in their papers, they won't say it in public or anything, but they admit this in papers, there would have to be a guy who goes to the pangolins, he gets infected by a pangolin, then he goes to Wuhan without infecting anybody along the way. And then when he's in Wuhan, you know, he goes to the market and starts sneezing on shit and whatnot. And that is the naturalist explanation. If you don't believe me, I can send you the papers.
Being sold. Like,
What?
do you realise that there is food from other countries that is sold in markets, yeah?
Yes,
So
but not pangolin or bats.
Doesn't matter how far the bat was when it was hunted.
Not
How
pangolin or
far-
bats. Pangolin and bat weren't sold in the Huanan market.
Gives a shit about pangolins.
What?
I'm saying that the pangolin virus could have been apparent. I'm not saying it is.
There wasn't pangolin at the market, though. Do you understand this?
Sure.
So there wasn't pangolin sold at this market. So this pangolin had to infect a human over in Malaya, over in the Malayan Peninsula. I can send you their exact habitat if you want. So it has to infect a human all the way down in here, down in Malaysia, and then that human has to take a road trip all the way up to Wuhan without infecting a single person along the way. If he got on the train, he'd have to be like, I don't know, in a hazmat suit or something to stop from infecting anybody. And then once he's in Wuhan, he like spits around the fucking Huanan market, you know, that has a super spreading event there. That is the naturalist explanation.
First of all, if you would remember, at the time of the coronavirus, it was a huge celebration in Wuhan. So there were a lot of travelers there. Now, the idea that all those people couldn't have gotten infected with that person, I don't know why you think that it's not possible that it could.
No, that is no. Why did this person not infect anybody along the way to Wuhan, though? They only started infecting people in Wuhan.
Why shouldn't he? In what way?
What?
Does the
You
narrative-
think like the fucking most infectious virus we've had for fucking years, and this guy doesn't infect a single person along his way to Wuhan? That's
I'm
insane.
saying, is it contradictory to the narrative that he could not infect people in that train or plane or whatever?
What? No, like, but he didn't. You know, I don't think you're understanding here. He would have to go all the way down from the Malayan Peninsula, a very long way away, not infect a single person on his way to Wuhan. Nobody.
Why does him infecting any? Why does infecting someone in that train ride, contradict the narrative of it being natural?
He didn't infect anybody. Did not.
How do you know this?
Because there was no cases along like some route to Wuhan. That's how we know it. It's just in Wuhan. It started in Wuhan. Nowhere else.
And we're sure of that. There's no cover-up of that.
Yeah, we're pretty fucking sure of it given there was no other epicenters.
Well, as to the origin of the virus, I've got nothing.
What?
I said,
So would you agree with me that that's strange that he didn't infect anybody along the way to Wuhan?
If
Okay, so there's another point in the lab leak theory. Got any more points for natural origin?
well, the virus was in the bat while the guy was eating the bat.
No, but it wasn't sold. That wasn't sold at this market.
Well, no, from what the story that I know, the one that I've read, maybe I'm wrong about this, is there was a bat, it was hunted, it was killed, there was a virus in the bat, a guy caught it, ate it.
First of all, it had to go through a pangolin first. That's just wrong. He would be hunting and killing a pangolin. Then you still have the issue of him infecting nobody on his way to Wuhan.
That's the official story.
What?
The official story that I know.
The official story that you know
is
is somebody ate a bat. That is laughably out of date. Maybe like a week after this started, people were saying that. But like, really, all the papers right now are saying no, it had to go through a Malayan pangolin.
Well, I've never seen a story about that.
The papers are saying it though, maybe not in the news outlets. I'm not reading news articles on this, I'm reading the papers. The papers from the naturalists who are saying it had to come through a pangolin.
Could I see one of those papers, maybe?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, the three I sent in there, they are all corroborating that it didn't fucking originate in Wuhan, and they go over, it had to go through this pangolin, and that's, how they explain the RBD. And then this is explaining how it is critically endangered.
It says around 404 not found.
Try removing like the brackets and stuff. I'm just copying this straight from Emacs. The brackets are weird.
Okay. No. Open. 404 not. Can you send them all individually?
That's 21 through 22.
Maybe your first link was wrong because the second link is actually taking me somewhere. Okay, so did the coronavirus originate outside of Wuhan? This is from a news article, US.news.
Okay, well, yeah, I'm using some news articles as like sources and stuff, but like in their actual papers, they're saying as well. It's just, I like having extra sources. I like having too many rather than too few, I should say. And 24 and 25 as well. So, I don't think it's going to be very entertaining if you just sit there and read that paper for the whole time, because it'll take like a few hours and whatnot. So we can go over on to something else then in the meantime.
Yeah. Well, I was getting into this thinking that you thought it was like malicious. So everything that I've prepared here is about it being malicious. I didn't listen to your previous debate because I thought it would be unfair.
You're allowed to listen to all my debates if you want, man.
No. I just didn't, want to have your points pre-prepared, have a list of refutations for each and every one of them.
That guy didn't know any virology, so we didn't really get a whole lot into it. We were just talking about the organizational structure of the WHO the whole time. Yeah,
which I do agree with you that the WHO has been infiltrated by China. I'm not saying it's a China puppet, but there is a tug of war inside it between China, other powers. China's not the sole influence in it.
Well, in any case, do you think RAT-TG13 is a real virus?
Do
you think RAT-TG13 is a real virus?
RAT-TG13, that's the first time I'm hearing it.
That one. Have you heard of that one before?
Let me go to Jimmy. Rings a bell, but no.
If you're not knowledgeable on it, I suppose, which is not much debate there. We can go over the WHO investigator team. There is 10 people in the team, and I have found conflicts of interest for 4 out of those 10. And that's publicly.
Oh, yeah. I watched the report on that. Yeah. I believe one of them was funded by one of them had extensive work with the Wuhan Virology.
So that's Peter Daszak. Basically what he does is he subcontracts US grants out to China. And he was the one who funded Shi Zheng-li's research into coronaviruses. So apart from that, we can go into other instances of scientists monkeying around with viruses. Scientists have recreated the 1918 flu virus. and they've recreated the almost extinct polio virus from DNA sequence alone. And the WHO, in fact, have funded research to introduce smallpox genes into related pox viruses. And in November 2015, Shi Zheng-li created a novel virus by taking the backbone of SARS-1 and replacing its spike protein with from another bat virus, one that she discovered actually, called SHC014-CoV. So like this would not be without precedent at all. This is like fairly standard research in virology.
I'm sorry, do we go? I thought we were talking about the WHO. You lost me.
Yeah, well, there's not a whole lot to argue on there because we already agree on the WHO being Chinese.
I don't agree that it's like controlled by China, but
sure, it's not controlled by China. It just has a large amount of Chinese influence.
I would say that it's not really Chinese influence. I would say that China negotiated those people in there.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, 4 out of 10 with public conflicts of interest, they clearly have a good deal of influence over who's on this team.
Yeah. I mean, most of them, I think that 2 out of 4 don't really have that big of a conflict of interest. I don't remember which 2 specifically, but if you read me the list, I'll remember it.
Yeah, so it's Dr. Thea Fisher from some hospital in Denmark, John Watson from Public Health England, Marion Koopmans, Dominic Dwyer, I say, has a conflict of interest. He works for Westmead Hospital in Australia. Then there's Vladimir Dedkov from the Institute Pasteur. And then there's Hung Nguyen Viet, another one who I say has a conflict of interest. He works for ILRI, which receives funding from China. Then there's Dr. Fabian Leendertz. He doesn't have anything. Peter Daszak, he's the big one with the conflict of interest. He actually funded this research. And then there's also Farang El Mubashir, he works for the Qatar government, Qatar being an ally of China. That's the last one is Ken Maeda, who is Japanese. He doesn't have any conflicts of interest as far as I can tell.
Yeah, the Qatar one and the Chinese funded one, I don't really think they have much of a conflict of interest. I think that just because you came from a country that's allied with China doesn't really teach you.
I'm not saying that he came from an allied country, therefore he actually works for that government.
But yeah, if someone worked for the Pakistani government, they're allied with China very much. Doesn't mean they have.
Yeah, that's a conflict of interest.
What way?
What way isn't it? If my boss is best friends with another company and he says, "Hey, you're going to investigate that company," wink, wink, and nudge, nudge. I've obviously got a conflict of interest there. This is essentially an allied government investigating China. Imagine if the Nuremberg trials were conducted by a German ally alone. That would be a little bit,
Imagine if the Nuremberg trials were conducted by someone who at some point worked for Germany, and they weren't even.
It's not someone at some point. It's someone who currently is part of an allied government.
Yeah, but I said working for Germany because working for Nazi Germany. Kind of, yeah. What I'm trying to explain to you is his government didn't send him there. So his government didn't order him to do anything.
Well, he does actually still work for that government, though.
Yeah.
So they have authority over him.
And how allied is Qatar with China?
They're, they're strategic allies. That's all it said on wikipedia.net.
Yeah, but Japan and the US are strategic allies. They're not really. No.
Yeah, I agree with you. Those two are somewhat lesser conflicts of interest, but they still are conflicts of interest. That's my point.
Yeah. And
these guys aren't neutral, which is what I'm trying to show. They're not neutral actors.
Yeah. And the Chinese funded one, as long as it wasn't the only funding they received, I didn't see much of a conflict of interest.
I mean, it still is Chinese funding.
There's probably some US funding in there too. Some UK funding.
Maybe. And I wouldn't want to investigating those guys either.
But it would be beneficial to the US if they were to say, yeah, China did it all along.
But he doesn't. What? But, like, not necessarily. The US isn't going to retract funding from him for, not saying it's China if it wasn't China.
Well, of course they would.
Not really. The Biden administration, they're fairly weak on China.
Well, yeah, but this was under the Trump administration, wasn't it?
And the Trump administration wasn't going to be really going after the WHO team, really. I mean, they might withdraw funding from the WHO, so we can look at exactly who he's funded by, I suppose. Yeah, I agree with you, those two weaker conflicts of interest. I agree on that. The fact that even Dzac is on there, that alone is kind of, okay, it's a PDF.
Yeah, but Dzac probably chosen as a negotiator during a negotiation with China. Remember, China's isn't going
to let
Dzac
funded that lab, though. Like, you got to agree that one's a huge conflict of interest.
I agree with you that it's a conflict of interest.
Yeah, like the fact that Dzac is on this team, that kind of speaks to Chinese influence at the WHO, which is the point I'm making.
Not really. It speaks to Chinese influence when the WHO tries to enter China. What probably happened here is the WHO said, we want to conduct research on this, and China said, whoa, 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 whoa. You're not just sending anyone in here. We're China. We have a great firewall. Remember, they're hell-bent on control. They want to know...
Does this not speak to influence to you? It sounds like you're saying, no, they don't have influence, but they have all this influence when people are coming into China.
Well, when they're coming to China...
I mean, they were going into China, is my point. So they did have that influence.
Unless I misinterpreted what you said. You said that they have influence in the WHO as an organization.
Okay, all right. So, yeah, that's maybe a misunderstanding there. I'm just saying they had influence over who is on this WHO team. I mean, I think they do have, like, a decent amount of influence in the WHO as a whole, because they were able to get them to say, no human-to-human transmission when that was clearly false.
Yeah, okay. I misinterpreted. I thought you were saying that China has influence with the WHO as an organization generally.
Okay, that's fine then. So I think we kind of agree on that point then. I mean, unless you're wanting to go into virology, there's not a whole lot else to this, I think.
I really wasn't prepared for you to think it was a lab leak. I thought this was going to be a malicious debate. No, not malicious debate, a maliciousness debate.
Yeah, like a malicious release.
Yeah. Anyway, I guess there's nothing to this. I mean, if you want to post this, but I don't think it was really an interesting debate.
Yeah, well, I mean, may as well. We've done it now.
Yeah.
Well, good having you on.
Yeah, you too. Good seeing you again.
Yep, see ya.
Bye.